Thank you so much, Hannah. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Today, our session is going to be producing and marketing local and sustainably grown foods. I'm Stacy Hall. I'm from Market Umbrella, Crescent City Farmers Market, and I will be moderating today's conversation. We are joined by a stellar panel. We have growers, we have market leaders, and community-based food system advocates. Today, our goal is to share some insight into how end consumers can view sustainability, how producers and aggregators can communicate growing practices more clearly. Let's begin with some introductions. I would like to invite each panelist to share a little bit about themselves, their organization, and how they support farmers or local food access through buying, marketing, or aggregation. So, Darlene, if you wouldn't mind starting us off.
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Darlene Adams Rowland. I'm the Executive Director of BRETA, which stands for Big River Economic and Agricultural Development Alliance. And that is because we are a nonprofit based in Baton Rouge, but we work with farmers from 17 different parishes and producers around the state, all along the Mississippi River. So while we started in Baton Rouge, our work has expanded to have a statewide impact. And we primarily, our mission is really about connecting farmers to economic opportunities, connecting people to, fresh, healthy food, and connecting our communities to each other. So we primarily do that through our Red Stick Farmers Market. We operate 4 locations of the Red Stick Farmers Market in Baton Rouge, and 2 of those are year-round and 2 are seasonal. And we we have a mobile market where we actually procure the produce from farmers and sell on their behalf in North Baton Rouge, which is a food desert in the Baton Rouge area with very poor health outcomes. And then just work through LSAC and all of our partners in LSAC to provide technical assistance to farmers across the state and try to bring more resources into Louisiana to support small scale farmers, whether that's through advocacy or farm grant systems through LSAC, and operate a variety of nutrition assistance programs through Grow the Good and with SNAP and FMMP, really to maximize, again, that economic benefit for farmers.
Darlene. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'll pass it to Kimberly.
All right, hello, I'm Kimberly
Yeah.
with the Fightingville Fresh Market. We are a twice weekly farmers market in Lafayette, on the north side of Lafayette. We are a farmer-owned, grower-centric market, trying to provide healthy food for the community, which is a food desert. We also really focus on encouraging people to grow their own food. That is one of our big missions, and we do sell vegetable starts and other resources for growers that they can use their SNAP to purchase, which is exciting. Yeah, that's us. Do I popcorn it to Ariel?
All right. Hello, everybody. My name is Ariel Edwards. I am based out of Alexandria, and I am the value chain coordinator for mid-market agriculture with LSAC. Value chain coordinator is essentially someone who helps connect producers to market opportunities, specifically ones that are value aligned with their business. And I do that at mid-market scale, which could mean working with wholesale buyers or a store or an aggregator, to the smallest garden scale via the Alexandria Farmers Market, where we have our community produce table, which is essentially a consignment option for small gardeners, beginner farmers to sell at the farmers market and get their foot in the door with selling. And yeah, so I sort of specialize in that realm, assisting folks with sort of walking along the routes to the scale that they'd like to be at with their operations. And that could look like assistance with costing and pricing, cooperative marketing and distribution, frameworks or designs, talking about packaging and so forth. And I also am the sole owner operator of the Dancing Radical Farm in Boyce, Louisiana, which is currently relocating. What? Which is a treat. And I'm very happy to be here.
Thanks, y'all. So as I said, I work for Market Umbrella and we run 3 Crescent City Farmers Markets and we do a customer survey every year. So I'm going to share out what I learned from our 300 customers that we surveyed last year about consumer priorities. And then I'd love to hear how the three of you feel about that as well. So I asked what the top reasons that people shop at the farmers markets are. And 90.9% said to buy local food. So we know that local is king, right? 74.8% of people said that they shop for sustainability. And then 74.5 like shopping at the farmer's market or buying local because they really feel like they love connecting with the farmer and hearing that story. And then only 37% said that they shop for organic. And I'll have to say, we only have one organic producer at our market. So I think it's really interesting to hear why people want to shop with local farmers and how important growing practices really are. Ariel, would you mind telling us a little bit about that from your perspective?
About my experience with organic at the
So
market.
Ariel, I feel like your experience is so interesting because you are a farmer and then you are aggregating and then you are running a market as well. So I guess just what do you think are the top reasons that customers want to buy local food? And how important do you think that growing practices are to customers?
Yes. I would say at the farmers market, the most common conversation that I have with people is more so around mm, not necessarily the quality of the produce, that being the reason why they're there, but sometimes a general mistrust of conventional food systems and wanting to, again, source more locally for the grander benefits that they are aware of. Um, Sometimes people will ask me outright, is this organic? And but I think generally, and even producers having managed an organically certified farm aren't necessarily aware of like the nitty-gritty specifics of what it means to be big O, like organic, versus maybe organic in a customer's mind, which is more like no pesticides on this. Is this good for the environment? That sort of a thing. So people at the Alexandria Farmers Market do often ask about organics, but in explaining, I think in the beginning, as a producer, I want to go into like, well, it's not sprayed, but they maybe synthetic fertilizers are used, something like that, which folks are not necessarily willing to hear my full explanation of because they might not be aware of all of what goes into growing the food itself. Um, so usually I'll say, this isn't certified organic, but they use sustainable practices or, especially since at the consignment table, I'm speaking on behalf of growers, being aware of their practices is important or their values, I would say. So, speaking to the fact that they're, reliant on nature for their inputs. They're using natural inputs, stuff like that, is usually how I'm talking to customers. Um, and yeah, so the reasons for them coming to the market sometimes have to do with organic. Sometimes it's quality. Sometimes people are saying, this tomato tastes better than anything I can get at the store, and that's why I'm at the market. That's very, very common. And then also because I love to just gab and chat with customers, I think they're very much there for the experience too. at the consignment table, we have a lot of unconventional stuff that you can't get at any grocery store. So people will just stop by to see what cool or new, interesting things we have and get a chance to learn about it, especially the kids. Um, yeah, or people are bringing their children to run them around the market and that experience, you know.
I love that, Ariel, because it is so true, like the community aspect of and that third space, and being able to learn about the product is why a lot of people want to shop local, I feel like. And I also love that you brought up little O versus big O, because I feel like that's something that we use in this world a lot. So like little O means that you use organic practices or maybe even better. And big O is that you've jumped through the hoops and gotten certified by the USDA to be certified organic. So yeah, I know. I feel like that's almost like a way that I try to explain that to customers sometimes, and they're just looking at me. So a lot of it is like education, is consumer education as well. Yeah, Kim, what about you? What do you think the top reasons that people shop at local farmers markets, and how do you think how important do you think growing practices are to the customers?
Yeah, we have a pretty wide range. Our customers are really diverse. We have, like the people who know about the benefits of farmers markets and are looking for things that don't have pesticides and, um, you know, are coming to us for that reason. But I will actually second, I mean, for our market, which is a small, neighborhood market, the community side of it is 100% the reason. I would say half our customers come because it is a place their kids can play and they will stay the entire time the market is open and the kids will be running around and they will be just chatting. Um, and along with that is also like, even though we operate, I didn't mention in the introduction, but we do operate a consignment table. So it's an aggregator of smaller producers. But I can't like tell you how often the producers end up hanging out because they're chatting. And so someone will come up and say, how was this grown? And I'll be like, oh, actually, Jerry's right over there. Hey, Jerry. Yeah. And send him over there to chat with the farmer. And it's kind of beautiful how often that happens. And it's like, well, he can tell you way better than I can. We do try to understand each grower's practices. We have a very wide range of practices. The other part of our market, like I said, about really trying to support growers. So we do have a lot of smaller growers. We understand there's just a shortage of food production. There's way more demand for local food than we have producers. So we're also just trying to encourage people and, where you're at is great. If you're not even aware of the problems of pesticides, that's okay. Grow food. There's customers who, aren't necessarily worried about that right now anyway. So, yeah, as far as why people come, I think the community side of it and the third space, just like we have a really unique environment that people are always kind of coming in and just like it's a breath of fresh air. It's so different than any other space you can find in Lafayette. And people just really appreciate meeting like-minded people, learning new things, having a lot of conversations that do educate, serve to educate them. And that seems to be what keeps people coming back, really.
Oh, I love that the education that happens by accident, even. Yeah. Darlene, what about you? What do you think are reasons that people are interested in local food, and how important do you think people consider growing practices when they're buying fruits and vegetables?
Well, I have a little bit of survey data as well. We have 97% of our market shoppers said that they come to the market to support local farmers and producers, and 83% because they think the products are fresher or more nutritious. So, um, I think sustainable growing practices are very important to a certain subset of people. The people that it's important to, it's really important to. And then I think when you talk about big O, little o, I think there's also a perception by a lot of people that just everything there is organic. Like I think that people do farmers market synonymous with organic, which is, couldn't be more false. So, Yeah, I mean, one way I use to describe the people that are very concerned and come and want to know and get pretty upset, if you tell them there's not organic, is that I actually wrote an article many years ago for a magazine all about organic farms in Louisiana, and I think at the time there was only 5 certified organic farms in the entire state. So I give that statistic often because I think it lets people know how difficult it is, and then give them a little brief rundown why it's difficult, with no hard freeze and those types of things. But I think that helps set the tone for why we don't have all these certified organic growers at the market. But I just try to communicate to them that, there are lots of other things to concern, which is food miles, how far it's traveled. And of course, that inherently anything with less food miles is more nutritious. So we focus on the nutritious side and the fresher side. And I think that resonates with most. But like I say, I feel like it's a small subset, but a very strong and vocal subset. That subset is very strong and vocal.
Yeah, Darlene, you all kind of started talking about like how you market your practices, but specifically, Darlene, when you say that you lean into like this is more nutritious, this is why we do that. So I always feel like it's very important to be transparent about practices at the market, but I also don't, as a market operator, don't want to single anyone out that is still growing local specialty crops, but they may still be spraying, or they may still be tilling, or they may still, not have the best labor practices, but they are still growing locally and bringing it to the market. But like, I also wonder how you can, as a market operator or as farmers, how you can market that in a way where you make yourself stand out for your production methods being non-conventional, regenerative, sustainable. So I guess what I'm asking is, so with customer preferences influencing how people view products, how do you market your products in a way to let people know that they're sustainable or regenerative or little o or even just local?
Me or whoever?
Anybody can take it.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So again, I think we don't use those words because I don't want to misrepresent, because we are representing a collective of a lot of different farmers with a lot of different practices. So I don't feel like it's our place to make that blanket statement. But what we can say as a blanket statement is locally grown, and that it's picked, within 24 or 48 hours, that it's fresh. It's fresh and it's locally grown. So that is really what we focus on, is those 2 words. We don't really get into sustainable, regenerative, any of those words, just because I can't say that confidently. And what I think is kind of tough is when people do come and ask you, well, who should I shop with? Or if, that's got and it's tough because while I have a good idea and I pretty much know, I actually am not on that farm and can't say 100%, because that's the whole reason there is a certified organic designation, is that's the only way it's certified. So everything else is kind of this gray area, and I do not feel it is my position to state on behalf of other farms. So while it may not be what they want to do, I do encourage the customers to, it's the beauty of the farmer's market. The grower is there. Go up, ask them directly. If you get an uncomfortable answer, then maybe that's not the place for you to shop. Maybe you move along until you have a good warm feeling inside. But that's the difference in the grocery store. And again, I go back to those people that really want organic food. They probably are better off going to the grocery store and getting a certified organic thing to make them feel good with that label. Although I also remind them a lot of that stuff comes from China, which has very different organic certifications than the US. So, there's a lot of different variations out there. There's a lot of confusion. And so we just really try to hone in the things that we know we can confidently say are true, which is it's fresh and it's local.
I love that, Darlene. I often encourage people to ask the farmer, if you want to know about their growing practices. Yeah. Kim, what about you? Do y'all feel like there's a way that you market? I know you're a grower as well. Do you feel like there's a way that you market your own product or products at the market to make people understand more about their growing practices?
Yeah, and I was going to say the same thing that, like sending people directly to the farmer is generally always the best bet if you want details and you have specific questions. Our market struggles. We're kind of a very small market, grateful for new funding lately, but so marketing in general isn't, we don't have a lot of signage as much as we'd like. Um, Ideally, it would be kind of like each farmer would have an information available about each farm's practices. We haven't quite gotten there. We're talking to the farmers about creating that material. It hasn't happened yet. But I think that storytelling aspect, right? Sending people back to the farmer, but then if they're not there, your social media accounts, And so for myself as a grower, so much of my culture as a grower, I put out there in my social media, and it is very much a vibe. It is very much okay, like, she's got mushrooms growing randomly in her farm. That probably means, like those kinds of ways of communicating and the benefit of knowing your farmer, having a direct connection in the community and being able to kind of track growers over the course of our lives and community together, so while at an aggregate table, we have a lot of the same challenges that Darlene was talking about, we can't make blanket statements. So we don't have, like material we can publish and say firmly with confidence. I think that the one of the best tools for farmers is, those really personal outlets where you can communicate all that. You can make videos, you can show pictures. Those kinds of things really resonate with customers. And if they scroll through and they're like, oh yeah, I want to support this farm. This is where I want my food to come from. A lot of that can come through in those formats.
Yeah, I love that, Kim. It's, it does take time, but Instagram is free, I mean, time is money, but it is an interesting world where we live in now where like you can see anybody's farm, you can see anybody's the way that they're growing stuff. It really is easy to film those videos. And y'all had an amazing video that you filmed at your at that Fighting Book Brush, by the way. But yeah, I do feel like like your camera eats first whenever you eat, like I don't believe in that, but I definitely think that like seeing videos, seeing pictures of how people are growing stuff and that whole storytelling aspect is like such an amazing marketing
And
tool.
it is archived, so it's like you invest in that. It doesn't necessarily mean you're going to make those same videos every season. People are going to scroll back and it may be something from 5 years ago, but they're still going to see those practices, communicated. So it's an investment that is archived. It is accessible for the long term.
Yeah. Ariel, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, just rolling off of the storytelling at the community produce table, we have pictures and information about every producer that's at the table currently that I usually can refer people to. For example, if somebody picks up, we have a woman named Sandra who brings plants. Like I can point to the compost pile that she built, that the compost that went into that plant and what she puts into it. And if people are asking and give them like a visual, something visual to connect to and like her face. And that level of transparency is really, really important to us in speaking towards the specifics of things. And I will say, and if somebody only having worked in certification, transparency on growing practices is really, really, really important to me if somebody asks that question. So if there are multiple growers at a table and it's really important to them that they get something that's most, sustainably grown, then I will recommend that sustainably grown product to them that's available there. Um, but there are other things like you mentioned, Kim, that people connect with. We have another grower, he grows vegetables in a more conventional way, but he has a PhD in entomology, which is really interesting. And he used to be a jazz drummer in Chicago, and like all of the other personality traits that come with being a person and a farmer and a community member for a long time. Um, we have some other folks who also allow, we had a farm for a while where they had their own farm stand. So I could direct people to their Facebook and like go visit them. If we're only here on Tuesday, but you can go there Monday through Friday and look at their farm and experience that. So, and the community produce table has been great for um, helping folks take those baby steps towards marketing more directly to
Mhm.
customers and like seeing what works um and there's been so many people who have come and gone within that process that it's always just very diverse and specific to the person that's there. Um, but I would say too, in being there at the table and speaking on behalf of folks, sometimes I'm, getting a sense of like the demographic of the customer that's showing up and like how I could speak about certain farmers' products to them, whether they're there with kids, like, hey, you can use this mint for a mint lemonade versus someone who might prefer teas and like the medicinal properties of mint. So sort of being fluid in those conversations and then relaying that information to the farmers who are bringing stuff to the community produce table and letting that inform how they want to speak about their products. Yeah. Or
Yeah,
even
I love that.
bring
You
new
have to be a
products.
good salesperson, and it sounds like Ariel is the best. Like you read the room and then you like figure out you don't offer a mojito to a child.
Well,
Yeah.
we had a grower of Thai descent too, bringing lime leaves. And so folks would see that and they're like, I'm not really sure what to do with that. So, but he is who's here. I have to give her full credit, had this idea of then making like a package of things and including a recipe for a larb. So a lime in there and then the leaves and then a bit of lemongrass. And so being able to like relay who's here, what are their questions about these products and like how can you include information, or she even did a drawing to help them like catch that product and have a little more curiosity around it and like who's behind it.
Well, I love that because being sustainable and regenerative is also growing a variety of things in your garden and on your land, right? So I think providing recipe cards for some things that might be unfamiliar or these little recipe baskets is an amazing marketing tool for sure. I feel like we've all kind of talked about this, but I'm wondering if there's any language that you feel like, yes, there's specific people that Darlene said are like only organic, and you're like, okay, well maybe Costco might be better if you just want to, if that is all, if you're not interested in labor practices or carbon sequestration, any of that. But then there's also CNG, certified naturally grown, which a couple of our vendors are at the market. There's chemical free, there's sustainable. And I feel like, the only term, a lot of this is like greenwashing, the only terms that are actually certified are CNG and Big O, USDA certified organic. So I'm wondering like, what are any of these buzzwords or certifications that resonate with any of your customers? Are there any terms that like really confuse them and they're like, what does this mean?
Yeah, I mean, I think to me, most all of those confuse people except organic. I feel like it's the only one that people really know unless they're really into, this. So I don't hear those a lot. I hear organic is what the request
Mhm.
is. There's one other quick point I wanted to make that I use with people that, of the benefits of local food. And that's people that are interested, is usually people interested in the environment as well. And so I often talk about how when you're purchasing locally at a farmer's market, you're actually helping to preserve green spaces and agricultural land in our state. Kind of when you say carbon sequestration, it made me think about that. It's
Mhm.
like, I think that's a byproduct that's not such a direct tangible benefit, but really important to people. And it's worth mentioning in the same conversation.
No, that is so true. I think that a lot of people are do have environmental concerns about their food as well, and I think it's great to point that out.
Okay, I'm gonna jump in because I have to comment on, like, add on to that, because at our market, yeah, I find three-quarters of the conversations veer from food into just systems that are failing.
Mm-hmm.
Up talking about all the systems that are failing and how food, and your food choices and your economic choices and where you spend your money. And, like, it evolves into all of those bigger conversations. Yes. We don't have any producers who are Big O or CNG. Those, we do get some customers who ask organic. I agree, with Darlene that that's the one that they might come in asking for. And otherwise, it's just starting to engage in all those conversations about how these things tie together. Like, right, food transportation. Like, what does it mean to be local? Well, it means your food wasn't harvested too early and spent a month in transportation and storage. So yeah, I just wanted to add to that yes, that is what we see at our market as well.
Ariel, any thoughts on these buzzwords and how people react?
Yeah, I have only seen the term regenerative used at our market in the context of meat producers,
Hmm.
but not vegetable producers. And and like Darlene said, I've only had folks ask, is this organic? Or, which I think is interesting and more centered around local, but homegrown. People ask me that all the time. Is this tomato homegrown? Which I don't
Hmm.
necessarily know what that means, but I usually say yes because I think they're implying like our home or anyway.
Hmm.
Those that seems to be that and organic are words that folks are really familiar with. Um, Otherwise, with buzzwords, um, because there's no synchronized definition of them, I think that it's still okay to say, as an alternative to organic, that something is sustainably grown. If it is, if that's accurate to you, then I think that it's okay. And I would encourage the use of that, um, especially if it's to justify like a higher price for something or why there's like a bug bite in this mustard green leaf, which is typically something I have to explain too, or like there's a spider in my carrots and sort of referencing like, oh, well, these folks are, their farm is a part of the ecosystem, maybe using some words or phrases like that kind of tie it to nature. And then similarly to what Kim said again, too, I think when people do want to get into the production practices, it could be speaking towards something as large as well, at least I know that this isn't like shipped from across the world at a grocery store, or to something as small as I tried to grow a tomato at home and I only got one that was this big. What did
Was
you guys
hard. Yeah.
do to grow your tomatoes? And then
Yeah.
kind of getting into the details of production that way through like their own home garden. Um, so that's kind of been my experience. I wouldn't say there's like one magic word that's going to convince someone because every customer is coming with a different want or need. But explaining like why things look the way they do or taste the way they do, has been mainly the ways to kind of come in with um sustain I'm using the words myself. There we go. Sustainable growing practices. Um and centering around like ecosystem and being a part of like the community and so many different scales outside of just people.
Yeah, we shop with we vote with our dollars, right? Like everywhere we decide to spend our money, that we do that is really intentional and we really can make a difference that way. So, Ariel, we've mostly been talking about fruits and vegetable growers, and you kind of talked a little bit about livestock. And yes, I would say that there are some certifications around that. But what I mostly hear, especially with, and I don't want to get too nerdy because I used to be a livestock farmer, but with ruminants, with cows and sheep and goats, everyone's like, is it grass fed? You know, and there is a certification for that, but not everybody, not a lot of people get it. And so it's that, but I think that even the farmers have an idea about if things are grass fed or not. So, as a person that visits a lot of people's farms when we're onboarding them, I'll go to one person's farm and he's like, yeah, we're 100% grass fed. And then he takes feed out to get the cattle to follow us and come up. And I'm just like, that if one pellet of grain, they are not grass fed anymore. They're grass fed, grain finished, you could say, but I do feel like people are starting to like as people are eating more meat now and being like concerned about that. I do get a lot of questions about the practices of livestock, and especially even just with eggs, because we all know it's very greenwashed. Again, I'll just say, if it cage free just means they could still be inside of a warehouse on a concrete floor with their beaks cut, which we know that's not what any of our small home chicken, raisers are doing. But I just wondered if y'all had anything to add in reference to meat products or eggs or milk or any of that, if anything else stands out for y'all. And I don't know who's in our audience, if we have any livestock farmers or if this is relevant.
Well, the only thing I would say about eggs is, people want to know that they're like free range chicken eggs. I will say that that's definitely something I hear. Or vegetarian fed sometimes, or the eggs I feel like the eggs have more buzzwords around them than anything, honestly.
Yes. Or like how some people think brown eggs are better than white eggs, just because yeah. Well, so I'm wondering, do y'all feel like you have enough sustainably grown products to meet the demands at your market? Or do you feel like there's room for more?
Room for more. Yeah, we put a lot of energy into encouraging producers.
Yeah, I love that about Fightingville Fresh, because it's like you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. Or what is it? You can teach a man to fish.
Yeah.
What is the saying? I think I'm combining like 3 or 4 right now, but it's really important to get people excited about growing their own food, and then that's contagious as well. Contagious in a good way.
Yes, yes, yes.
Ariel or Darlene, do you feel like there's more room for sustainably grown products in your market and in our food system?
Yeah, I mean, for the people that are looking for it, for sure. I mean, we definitely have the growers that I think people know are the more sustainable and people shop with them. The price is higher than the conventional growers, so there's that piece of it too, So will that many more people pay the higher price that the sustainable growers charge? That's a good question. I think everybody wants more sustainable food, but sometimes when they're looking at the price difference with conventional, they're not necessarily willing to take that leap in the moment. So
Something that I forgot to mention too, specific to Alexandria Farmers Market, and this is my historic understanding of the market. Feel free to correct me, Bahia, since you founded it. But Inglewood Farm, who's an organically certified farm, was kind of the anchor to the Alexandria Farmers Market as a fruit and vegetable producer. And even though we're a rural market, I think that in particular is what informs so many customers to this day still around wanting organic food and where to find it and sort of creating that demand. So I think that it's worth mentioning that although it might not be frequent, sometimes that could also come from the fact that it's harder to access. Therefore, I think that there should be more sustainable food, or that should be marketed more clearly, or folks may want to consider certification to a certain extent, again, if they're able to justify higher prices. Now, that organically certified farm, most folks would just price similarly to them rather than them having the higher prices at the market. So, all in all, I think the ways in which organic works in other places, it just that system just didn't coalesce here for whatever reason. But they had a cult following and continue to this day, as a, big O organic farm. And I would say too, like the quality of their produce is really great. And so connecting organic to that quality is also very, very essential. So um, so yes, and then at the smaller community produce table scale, which you had referenced before, Stacy, sort of this diversity and kind of connecting that to sustainable too. Like more, we have unconventional products like yard long beans, which or Malabar spinach, and it's easier for folks to grow during this time, and therefore is kind of more sustainable in the larger scheme of things than forcing them to grow something else. And people are willing to buy it and try it if you are able to kind of introduce them to it in the right way. And so I think we also have a lot more room for that and opportunity for folks to start exploring those alternative crops and introducing them to the marketplace more widely.
That's really
Yeah.
interesting. I think the start of your market with Inglewood does change the whole perception. That's
Yeah.
fascinating. We actually had Inglewood at our market for a while as well.
Mhm.
So that's interesting.
Yeah, I feel like the biggest takeaway I'm getting from this, and y'all correct me if I'm wrong, but the strongest marketing tool we have for letting people know about growing practices is storytelling.
Mhm.
And however that looks, right? That could look like direct contact. That could look like really being strong with your brand to make sure that, you are identifying with your brand and letting people understand more about your growing practices. Or that might mean using Instagram, or that might mean having labels or photographs. But yeah, I feel like storytelling is like the ultimate marketing tool for getting people to understand growing practices and sustainability. Well, I would thank you, everybody. I would love to open it up for questions, unless any of you three have any closing remarks, takeaways before we move to the question and answer portion. Okay, great. So we are gonna, in order to make this feel like a safe space, we're gonna stop recording so that the audience can feel like they can ask questions and they won't be recorded. And that can look like, Bahia, do we have questions?